Hello everyone, it's me, Samuel Taylor Ackroyd, and good morning from Frankfurt Airport's Terminal 1 here in Germany. I have just arrived here after flying on board one of Lufthansa's Airbus A320neos from my home of Edinburgh in Scotland, and now I need to catch my connecting flight with Condor on board the Flying Pencil, which is the Boeing 757-300. I'm super excited for this flight because I have a window seat which has an excellent view of the Rolls-Royce RB211 engine. So I'm very excited for this flight. So now I just need to figure out where I'm going and whereabouts my flight will be departing from here in Terminal 1. So looks like my flight with Condor down to Gran Canaria today will be going from departure gate B3. So I just need to make my way over to concourse B for Bravo, as that's where my flight to the Canaries will be boarding from this afternoon. Okay, so because I've arrived on a non-Schengen flight and I'm connecting onto a Schengen area flight, I just had to go through a border control checkpoint. There was no questions asked or anything, just handed the passport, quick stamp, and that was it. So it was dead easy. So I am now in concourse B for Bravo, where my flight will be departing from. So I can pretty much just relax from here. Correction, I am not yet in concourse B for Bravo like I thought. I am actually in concourse A for Alpha, which is where I arrived from. I thought I was in concourse B, but no, there's some more signs pointing to where to go for concourse B. So I'm just following the signs there now. I think this might be one of those cases where I need to get a bus or something. Yeah, it is, because I need to take a lift down to get to concourse B. So these lifts will probably lead to some buses or something. I'm not quite sure because I've never connected from concourse A to concourse B at Frankfurt Airport before. I have made connections here in Frankfurt, but just not from concourse A to B. So this route is a little bit new to me. So for those of you who might potentially end up connecting from concourse A to concourse B at Frankfurt Airport in the future, bear in mind that you might need to bring your walking shoes because you need to do a lot of walking to get between the two concourses, and depending on how long the queues are for the border control, you'll have to do quite a bit of a standing about. It took about 10 to 15 minutes for me to get through the border control checkpoint when I first arrived here, so not that long at all. But I've still got less than 2 hours until the boarding process for my flight down to the Canaries starts, so I'm in no rush at all. Okay, so there's a choice between if you want to go in the lift or walk up multiple flights of steps. I've chosen the harder way of walking up multiple flights of steps just to get a bit of exercise, and it keeps me moving a little bit. I can feel myself getting tired already, but that's probably just because I've got my rucksack on my back while walking up all these stairs. Okay, so I've managed to find my gate, B3, and thank goodness as well, because I really needed to sit down. So I'm just going to sit here for a bit, have a drink, and then I might go have a wander around and see what's in this part of Terminal 1. Well, this right here is definitely such a nice sight to see at any airport. The amount of airlines and variety that we have here is incredible. We've got Lufthansa, El Al, Turkish, Eurowings Discover, Condor, All Nippon Airways, United Airlines over there. There's a lot to see here. Sadly, no 747s in sight around here, so I'm going to take a little walk and see if I can see any 747s from any other windows in this part of Terminal 1. Well, unfortunately, there are no other windows in this part of the terminal building with decent views of the apron. If you're someone who likes to do a bit of terminal spotting, then I would recommend coming up here to where gate B3 is. That's probably your best bet for terminal spotting. There also isn't exactly a lot of places to get a bite to eat, so you're rather limited as to where you can go for something to eat. So this is definitely not my favorite part of Terminal 1 or Concourse B in Terminal 1, because there honestly isn't a lot here to eat, and honestly you're kind of limited to decent apron views unless you come up here to where gates B3 and B2 are. That's your best bet for terminal spotting. Anyway, we are shortly going to be boarding our 757-300 down to Gran Canaria, so I'm just going to head back over to gate B3 and wait there. We would be boarding our flight through a remote gate, which means that we were being taken by bus over to our 757. Which at Frankfurt is always a real treat thanks to the amazing views of Lufthansa's 747s and A340s, which I do have more trips booked to fly on board both these aircraft types later this year, so stay tuned on my channel for those upcoming trip reports. In the meantime, enjoy these clips of these fantastic planes.
Bitte keine. Stattdessen redet er halt gerne an.
Ja, klar, schade drum. Aber wenn der dich da so. Er hat
gesagt, Papa und alles, aber was hat er getan, dass ich Vater nicht? Er hat zum Geburtstag gesagt, ja, er dürfte ich was. Ich nehme mich halt einfach mit. So, ganz klasse. Das sind die richtigen Schuhe.
Auch wieder Tschetschenien, das weiß ich.
Nee, lass mal.
So.
Der anstatt mich zu unterstützen oder anstatt zu sagen, ey, wenigstens mal lieber Geld. Das wäre ja damals das schlimm gewesen. Das sind Bilder, die aufwendig sind, wenn wir das erste Post hier wird diese Begriffe.
We are now approaching the aircraft that I will be flying on down to the Canary Islands today, so here's some information about the aircraft. This aircraft is a 26-year-old Boeing 757-300 registered as Delta-Alpha Bravo Oscar Hotel, which performed its first flight on the 9th of March 1999. It was then delivered to Condor on the 30th of March 1999, so I just so happened to be flying this plane on its 26-year anniversary since it was delivered to Condor. Since then, it has flown with Condor, Thomas Cook, Transavia, before returning back to Thomas Cook. Then when the 757 was 5 years old, it returned back to Condor on the 28th of May 2004, where it has remained with Condor since. Now enjoy these clips as we board the aircraft from the apron. The Condor cabin is laid out in a typical 3-3 configuration with a few business class seats at the front, which are basically the same seats just with the middle ones blocked off. As you can see, the crew are shutting the door in preparation for takeoff. I was very happy with my seat on this flight, seat 14A, because as you can see, it has a perfect view of the Rolls-Royce RB211 engine. So as you can imagine, I was very excited for this flight. The safety video was then shown on the overhead screens, which is also something that isn't common on planes anymore, and was a sign of just how old the plane is. Then the engines were starting up and we would begin taxiing to runway 18 for takeoff. So enjoy these clips of the taxi, takeoff and incredible sound of the Rolls-Royce RB211 engines at full power. Well, that takeoff was definitely something that I didn't think I would get to experience, as I didn't think I would get the chance to fly on the 757-300, but boy was I wrong about that. The Rolls-Royce RB211 roar is definitely an incredible sound. Now let's have a look at the seat on board Condor's 757-300. Legroom is okay for someone who is over 6 foot tall, however that's probably because the back of the seats curve inwards a bit. There is a seat back pocket, however, because of the curvature of the seat, the usage of it is quite debatable, but at least it's there. There is a tray table which is a decent enough size and doesn't extend, but it doesn't really need to as the size of it is good enough. It also has an indent for a drink. Above the tray table there is a plastic cover which contains the safety card of Condor 757s, the buy on board menu and the duty free catalogue. Here's a little look at the safety card. The buy on board menu has a pretty good selection of food and drinks on offer. The duty-free catalogue has a very good selection of items to purchase, including some Condor aircraft models, which I was very tempted to purchase, but in the end I didn't do so, which to be honest with you, I kind of regret. Above the seat are the call bells for the crew's attention, individual air vents and the fasten seat belt and no smoking signs, as well as the overhead screens which were switched off for most of the flight. There is Wi-Fi on board Condor 757s, however on this particular flight it wasn't working. When the crew distributed the buy on board service, I decided to try out Condor's chocolate cookies and I ended up buying 2 of them, one for now and the other one for a few hours later, and they were quite nice. The bathrooms on the 757-300 are quite spacious and have everything you would expect, as well as a baby changing table if you're travelling with a baby. As you can see from this shot, the 757-300 is certainly a very long aircraft. To be specific, it is 54.4 meters, which is the equivalent of 178 feet. While heading back to my seat, I noticed that pretty much every seat on this flight was taken, which doesn't surprise me as it was the end of March, so lots of people will be beginning their holidays. Now, this flight ended up turning into a bit of a sightseeing flight for me, as the weather over most of Europe was beautiful this day, so there was plenty of beautiful views, including a few airports, so I'll be quiet for a bit and let you enjoy these clips I got during the flight. After a rather smooth and fantastic flight, we soon started descending towards the Canary Islands, with most of the passengers on this flight heading there to start their holidays. Meanwhile, I'm only in Gran Canaria airport for a few hours on this occasion. Now, Condor happens to be the launch customer of the Boeing 757-300 and operated a total of 15 of them over the years, including the prototype, which has since been retired, along with a few other Condor 757-300s. Speaking of which, unfortunately, the retirement of Condor 757s will be this year, more specifically at the end of October. So if you're someone who is interested in flying on board a Condor 757-300, you have until the end of October to do so, and if this happens to be the only time I myself get to fly a 757-300, then I am so glad that I jumped at this opportunity and booked this flight. It was certainly a flight to remember. Also, Condor's website does show what aircraft type is scheduled to be operating a flight when booking on their website, so that will come in handy on occasions like this. Now, here's what I paid for this flight. I paid £60.99 for the economy light fare, which on Condor entitles you to only bring a bag that fits under the seat in front of you, which is all I needed, so this was perfect for me. I also paid an extra £21.10 to select seat 14A, and that extra £21.10 was definitely worth it for that amazing view of the Rolls-Royce RB211 engine. All in all, I paid a total of £82.09, and I'd say that this experience was worth every penny, although the experience is not quite over yet. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of this trip report, because the crew were kind enough to allow me to have a flight deck visit. Now, the approach into Gran Canaria airport was quite interesting because we had a bit of a wind shear, and I thought we were actually going to perform a missed approach as the pilots applied what seemed like full power twice, but then quickly reduced power again. Now enjoy the landing into Gran Canaria on runway 21 right. So folks, welcome to Gran Canaria in the Canary Islands, where unfortunately my time on board this fantastic aircraft is sadly coming to an end. What an absolutely fantastic flight on board this Condor Boeing 757-300. The crew were absolutely fantastic and definitely in a very good mood, which is definitely a fantastic way to help holidaymakers start their journey. The seat was comfortable, and the onboard menu and duty-free catalogue was also very good, and as previously mentioned, I do kind of regret not getting one of the models, but at least I got to fly the 757-300. The main highlight for me though was flying on this rare aircraft type and getting a perfect engine view. I purposefully selected seat 14A as I saw from other YouTube videos that it offers a fantastic view of the left engine, and us AV geeks sure do love the Rolls-Royce RB211 engines. This also happens to be my first ever time flying on board the Boeing 757, and will probably be the only time that I ever get to fly the more uncommon 757-300. But of course there is the more common 757-200, which I do actually have plans to fly on later this year over in America, once again with a perfect engine view and with the other engine that is used on the 757s, which is the Pratt & Whitney PW2000, so I'm very excited for that flight. Now there certainly wasn't as many 757-300s built as there were 757-200s, with only 55 of them being built and delivered to just a few airlines, including Condor, who, as already mentioned, was the launch customer of the 757-300, who have operated a total of 15 of them, including the prototype, which has since been retired. Now, just as a quick reminder, unfortunately the rest of the Condor 757-300s that are currently flying won't be around for too much longer, with the final passenger flights of these Condor 757s scheduled to be at the end of October this year, 2025. So if you are interested in getting yourself on board a Condor 757-300 before they retire, you still have a few months to do so. A little bonus for me personally was being able to fly on board a Condor aircraft that still has the older Thomas Cook type livery, meaning that this is basically the closest that I will ever get to flying with Thomas Cook, and the only time that I will ever get to fly on board a Condor plane with the older Thomas Cook type livery. Now, as we park up, let me tell you right now that I was lucky enough to be allowed a flight deck visit, which actually ended up lasting around 15 minutes, and I was also joined by a fellow passenger who was a nervous flyer, and both me, her, and the pilots were all chatting for a good few minutes. So it was so great to be able to have a flight deck visit that didn't just last for around 30 to 60 seconds, but rather around 15 minutes. This will also probably end up being the only time that I get to sit in the captain's seat of a Boeing 757-300. Also, after the flight deck visit, myself and a few of the cabin crew ended up chatting away for a good few minutes, and we even got a short clip of us together. As you can imagine, this flight was definitely a truly wonderful experience because of all of this, and it's such a shame that it all had to come to an end. Yeah, I'm traveling alone. That's how I usually travel, and that's usually how I prefer it as well. Because then I don't have to worry about anyone else. I can just do my own thing.
Well, you guys had to follow this guy, okay?
You heard it here, folks. Give me a follow.
And please visit Sri Lanka. It's very important. Visit Sri Lanka.
That's something I'm going to do at some point. Visit Sri Lanka.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Whichever arm. Thank you guys very much for this flight. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. See ya. So with that, thank you all so much for watching this very special trip report, and thank you so much to the crew on this flight. You really made this such a special experience for me, and I'm so grateful to have been lucky enough to have this experience. Stay safe everyone, and I will see you all in the next video.